Like now is decent. Like outside the window, it's a little bit cloudy. It's a little bit chilly. That's at least decent Christmas weather. I don't have to have snow, but like sunny and 64.
Is weather tracking like normally for where you live in Colorado?
Yeah, meaning there's no normalcy to it at all.
Yeah, totally normal. Okay. All right, we've updated the thumbnail. Stuff looks a little better. We actually
Nice.
had a couple of really cool people drop in last time to say hi, so that was pretty fun.
Yay.
All right, looks like we're live streaming okay, and it's all working. So I've got
Yay.
run of show. Yep. Here's how it's going to work. We have opening, just sort of catching up while the
Mhm.
stream gets together, and then we will talk about community news and updates, stuff like that.
Cool.
Then introduce the guest, author of the week. Maybe if you want, talk about a little bit about ending, the fact that it's done. That's some pretty cool news. It's now a done deal, right?
Yep.
We can talk about quickfire questions, host project updates, and then if there's any AMA questions, and I've got a whole folder of questions from the last con that I keep forgetting to go through. So maybe I'll throw one of those at you and we can walk around that. But I did want to talk about short stories. Like I said, we've got our community writing all kinds of short stories, so we just need to have a shot at defining them. It's just always a good conversation to come back to and have. So, friends, welcome. Hello to the Legend Fiction Show. I'm your host, Dominic, founder, chief nerd at Legend Fiction, sorcerer supreme, and mega dork, joined by my super good friend, Gabi Batel, who is also a super mega nerd dork, who runs the Legend Fiction Writing School, which is getting underway and it's coming together really cool. So, hey, Gabby, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you with us. You've just finished a brand new book, which is your third. It's your third, right?
My third full-length novel, yes.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Hey, we've also got another member of our Collaboratory. Gianna is joining us. Hey, Gianna, and welcome onto the show.
Hello.
Hey,
Hey,
I'm getting some audio feedback. Can you just check your settings? Let me see if I can do it for you, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
No, I can't.
We'll just give you a second. All better?
Let's see. Testing. Yes. Is it in your headphones now?
Yes, now it's in my headphones.
Hey, good to see you. Good morning. Thanks for both of you jumping on a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm just going to, now we got more cool people in here, move this around. So we'll have Gabby's kindly agreed to be our guest author of the week since she's also just finished her novel. So that's very exciting news. How are you doing, Gianna? How's the weather for you? How are you feeling today?
The weather is doing, well, it was in the sub-zeros this past weekend for me.
Lucky.
It was, I want to say it actually never did get to the sub-zeros when it was the morning. So I think at night, that's when it did get to the negative single digits, but it was very cold over the weekend. But weather has been much more fair so far. Everything's going all right. And I am this week and yesterday, just for any Pope Leo fans, my husband went to his favorite pizzeria, had dinner, sat on his chair, put his jacket over his cutout, and had a very fantastic time. So
that's fun.
he put a picture. He shared me a picture. So they're both South Chicago natives. So he has a jacket with his. This is through his running track club, and it says South Chicago Track Club. I'm not gonna promote them because this is for writers, but it has, it says South Chicago on this jacket. He puts the jacket around Pope Leo's cutout, and it just felt so right. So
that's fun. So you're saying that there's a Pope Leo, before he was Pope, had a dedicated chair that he would sit in at this pizzeria, and now it's like the special chair or something?
It seems so, yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
My understanding, but this is his favorite pizzeria in Illinois, in the one specific one that he went to the last time, and that's his favorite.
That is so cool. Oh, that's very cool. Well, to catch you up briefly, Gianna, like I said to Gabby, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of Gabby's cool stuff that she's been working on. I'd like to talk about short stories since that's it's always been a big deal for us. Now it's a super duper mega bigger deal because we've got so many anthologies floating around. just saw a brand new member who joined us, and the first thing he did was post a story idea in our Emporium at the Edge of the Universe
That one sounds
anthology.
so fun.
So it sounds, yeah, that's, I'm trying to think of an idea for that one. So we'll get into talking about stories and stuff, but first we're going to feature a little bit of what Gabby's been up to. And then, as usual, we'll go through our own project updates and then any questions from people in the chat, or I've got a bank of questions that we can be chatting about. So that's going to be our format for today. Why don't we get into community updates and events for the week? So what's really cool is both of you ladies have your own specific projects that you're helming. At some magical point, we need to get Mary Krager to come and join us because she also helms a specific section of the community. That'd be really fun. So I think on my end, trying to think like what we shared about last week. So here's where we are, sort of brief overall update. We are reaching the end of the year, and we are still planning on having 2 LegendHaven cons next year. So the next con is, I'm pretty sure I've got it in April, and we created a theme for that one called Banner Mark. And so let's see, we've got an anthology together for that, so people can create stories and help build out that world. And let's see, I need to announce another anthology for the one that's going to be in like next October. We're also,
Do you already have a plan for that one? Like a world building idea and a name, or is it still in the works?
No, it's actually, the name of the world is published. It's actually on the LegendHaven website.
Okay.
So people can go see that. And I've hinted a little bit at where I think the story could go, because that could be very cool. I now need to go and create kind of my, sort of as the founder, my story idea for what happens in that world. I still need to build that out. So we've got about 8 to 10 anthologies that are all now live at this point. I need to add a couple more, probably Thrill Runners 2. And then I want to add, I think it's called Amber Veil is the name of the October con. So I need to add those 2, and then I'll put out another post announcing, hey, people, we've got 5 new anthologies that are in there. So as of last week, we have The Lost Legends of St. George and His Merry Dragon Slayers. I hope people have lots and lots of fun writing dragon killing stories with that one. Also, I think it'd be super dope if they're the team that St. Patrick hired to clear the snakes out of Ireland, because snakes equal dragons. So that'd be super fun, you know.
Crossover.
Yeah, there you go. I'm trying to remember, what's the other anthology that we announced? There was Banner Mark that was announced. There's also the Small Word Sagas, which is like tiny people trying to survive around giant humans who are basically like trolls. And so, yeah, not just tiny people, they're also the tiny Vikings trying to survive around humans. And so I think that creates a very fun, you know, it's like the Borrowers, but now give them all red beards and axes, and I don't know, they fight each other and something like that. So it's like, yeah, it's like the Borrowers on Red Bull is kind of the idea. And then humans are trolls with smartphones. I don't know where that goes, but we've got to have fun with that. Please, people. So on my end, as encouraging people to write stories, which is kind of the theme for today, that's been on my end. Major things I've been thinking about is how to encourage and inspire people to write stories by creating cool, fantastical worlds. Okay, that's my end. Like I said last week, the writing challenge was small and focused and intimate. People seem to really, really enjoy it. So we're going to do it again. And I think it's going to be a good habit for our community. We'll run a convention, and then 2 weeks later host a 30-day writing challenge. And that's the plan right now. We'll see where that goes. Plus, we try to keep a live stream going every week. And if I can't do it Thursdays, I'll see if I can bump it over to a Wednesdays. All right, Gabby, you're in the hot seat now. What would be an update from you on things you're thinking about, you know, in terms of the community and specifically the school?
Yeah, so what's really exciting is plan is to launch January, and January is creeping up on us fast. I'm very excited. And so the first month is it's not going to be like available as in school is going to start, but hopefully by the end of the week it'll just all be prepared, ready to launch, and possibly ready to preview for a few people who are interested in maybe sharing it with their people. And so, yeah, pretty much just plugging away. Last little tweaks, last little details, seeing all the puzzle pieces come together.
Mm.
And then pretty much spreading the word. I'm hoping to spread the word a lot right before Christmas because I think that would be a really, really cool Christmas gift to give. Like, hey, I know you really love writing, and I know that you want to finish either like a bunch of short stories or you want to finish a whole novel, whatever the case may be. How about I just give you coaching for a year? And then you could start in January or you can start after that. But I just think it's a really good time to spread the word. And so that's what we're focusing on right now.
When we last spoke this past week, we talked about helping people who are taking the school to not just show up and just like get more theory, because this is something that us authors can get into. It's like, you know, nuts about writing, or you don't write and you just nuts about learning how to write, which is what I did for years. And I just like, oh, if I read this next book, I'll be a better writer. Oh, here's another new book, another new podcast. And so I just binged all of that and didn't do any writing.
That's me with
I don't know what
drawing.
I remembered. So when we created this school, and it's like a 12-month program, right? You and I were talking about, well, we need to help authors actually set goals and then actually help them meet those goals so that they
Mhm.
feel like they're accomplished writers and they're actually implementing what they're learning. Any thoughts or updates on that front?
Yeah, so I just want to point out that like, a book, it is a big task, right? And especially because there are moments when you might feel stuck or you might get bored with your own story because you're so familiar with it or whatever. But on the flip side of that same coin, it is very doable, and you would be stunned at how much you can do in a year. I mean, you could write a complete novel, cover to cover, epic fantasy, thick. Or you could do like however many short stories you wanted and do them really well and make so much progress in 1 year. And so that's a lot of what the school is wanting to do. It's just kind of giving you that nudge and that little guideline, because at least on for me, it's really easy for me to feel like I have to be in the groove to write, or I have to have like a designated block of time where I can just write, 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 write until I can't see straight. And it's like, well, yeah, those are great times. But at the same time, you can take dedicated, small, manageable chunks. And if you are dedicated to that, if you keep going and you persevere, you will have an immense amount of word count by the end of the year. And it'll be good word count too, because I also feel like it's really easy to like stick on chapter one and feel like you can't go anymore. So like you just keep rewriting that same chapter one over and over because you're trying to get it perfect. Or then on
No
the flip
idea
side of
what you mean.
that. I can't even tell you how many times I rewrote the beginning of ending. I'm happy with it though now. So anyway, but yeah, or you could also like feel like, oh, well, if I'm writing straightforward, like I keep pushing forward, then clearly what I'm doing is not any good. And it's like, no, this school is going to teach you how to practice, how to think about how to write, but also how to make progress, how to make product. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about this school that like most other, or put it this way, I can't speak to most other programs, but at least the programs that I've been into, it was either very much the work was focused solely on like theory, like you said, or it didn't push you to actually make progress on the actual project, on the word count. Because I mean, world building and backstory and ideas, those are fine, dandy, and lovely. And even if there's pages upon pages upon pages of them, that's wonderful, that's great. But that's not what gets published. What gets published is a book, and that's what we're going to get you to.
Yeah. So we talked about finishing a book in a year, and helping with all the steps and the parts that go into that, or helping you to craft a story a month. And you can either write for one of the anthologies that we're throwing out there, or you can create your own stories, but you'll work on one story per month. And
Mhm.
depending on like the numbers on this, the word counts, like a short story can be 3,000 to 6,000 words. So at the end of a year, you have 12 short stories of about maybe 6,000 words, which is what we have for our anthologies. I mean, that's almost a full novel right there. You can take those stories, put them together, and you can self-publish a little book of,
Mhm.
and that's something a lot of authors will do is collection of my stories, or you can put them all on your website. But yeah, so that's exciting. I'm looking forward to being able to offer this to either our members or to new people for the new year.
And
Okay,
the school will have like special anthologies that only school members will get to be a part of. So keep an eye out for that.
yeah, I want to see where that goes.
Oh, that's gonna be a
Um,
blast.
yeah, okay, so you heard it here first, folks. Okay, Gianna, is there anything that you'd like to share with us about the Collaboratory? Your my dedicated person who's helping me to think of the Collaboratory and what it is. Would you like to give us a little overview of what the Collaboratory is, and then we can talk about a special project that you're thinking about and working towards?
Of course, yeah. So, the Collaboratory, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a group within Legend Fiction, or let's if I'm allowed to describe it like that. But
Yeah.
it's an initiative. Let's just say that an initiative within Legend Fiction for authors, writers who they're making progress towards, getting their books ready to publish. So they have manuscripts, and they want to promote it, whether that's to publishers or to their audiences. But they really need help, with promoting it from like a marketing sense, whether that's creating the marketing materials for it, or just wanting to outline it. So that's so what the Collaboratory is for. Is that's what we're here to help you with. We're here to help you, give you the guidance of from people who know marketing, and to help you promote and pitch your books not just your audiences, and to grow that audience as well and gain visibility for it, but
Yeah.
also to potentially publishers, if because in a way marketing does involve also like what's your elevator pitch, so there's that element in there. And so that's what we're currently, so that's what the Collaborator is. And in terms of special projects, I'm allowed to share a little bit about it. And correct, and keep me honest here, Dominic. But we are in the process of setting up, creating, and launching a what we're planning to be a two-tier marketing program, and marketing services within with the Collaboratory. And it's and for people who are not in the Collaboratory, it is available, but you'll get, but for Collaboratory members, they do get it. I want to say Collaboratory member only benefits, but
There's a lot more resources. Yeah, in the
there are a
group.
lot more resources. So,
Yeah.
but but that's currently in the works of what we're building, and there'll be I'm excited to helm that project and that initiative. And so if anyone has any further questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. Dominic's happy to answer them, but I'm happy to share more details about them as they become available.
Yeah, thanks, Gianna. So it's an exciting project where we've got this whole community of authors writing together, and then there's a bunch of them who want to publish and share and do the whole marketing side of things. And so a couple of months back, like Gabby was saying, hey, I'm testing this thing and it's super cool, and this actually really sucked, and oh, this thing is super dope, I need to test this. And I thought, man, the things that you're learning and the things that I'm learning, and there's other authors testing things, like what works really well when you're trying to sell, at the front of a grocery store, you're trying to sell your books. Like, okay, we need to have a space where we come together and share this stuff together. And so we created the Collaboratory. It's a collab laboratory where we share and test ideas together. And Gianna's agreed to be our specifically awesome person who takes care of those authors, especially when it comes to helping them to create marketing, either offering some marketing services, or we want to partner with the authors who are involved, who keep coming back to our cons. We want you to come join this Collaboratory, come be a part, share what's worked, be featured on our blog. We would like to feature what you have to say on our blog. We're growing this audience, and it's not just for us. Come and come and join in and help us build something really cool. And what we're building, we hope that it benefits you too, because the more authors can write and create and get it out there, the more cool stuff exists in the world. So why don't we head over and let's chat with our guest author of the week. Drum roll, we have Gabi Batel. So you've just finished a brand new book. And we probably won't see it for another 5 to 6 months as it goes through editing and reviews and stuff like that.
September 23rd, 2026, but it's on pre-order now. So there's an Amazon link and it's on pre-order.
Okay, so there you go, folks. It's on pre-order. If it's you'll have to send me the link to that, Gabby, so I can put it in the comments.
Yeah.
in the description
Thank
of
you.
this so folk can go check it out. Tell us about your book and what is ending.
Yeah, all right. So the short version is that Ending imagines a world that is so young that Death himself, like the Grim Reaper, the incarnation of Death himself, is just a teenager. And he's not the only one in the world. There are incarnations of so many other facets of reality. The youngest of which being Indini, which is Death's name is Priam. So Priam's little sister Indini, she is life itself. Problem with that is she's been ill with like some kind of wasting sickness that should not be impossible, or that should not be possible because they're all immortal. And so Priam thinks it's his fault because who else could be killing life except Death? So he's kind of kept his distance until it takes a turn for the worse because she gets poisoned, which also should not be possible because they're all immortal. And this poison affects him too. So now he needs to find out what's going on. He needs to find who created this poison. He needs to find out who is commissioning this poison, like who's behind it, and he needs to find the cure for this poison. And so it is a mystery from there, an epic fantasy mystery.
Oops, I'm muted. Like a mystery from, I don't know, kind of like Olympus or something. What are the comp titles? What is it like similar to?
Yeah, so I would actually say, just for the feel of it, it's a very similar to Lee Bardugo's writing, specifically Six of Crows. And then the other one I would say is that if you're a fan of V.E. Schwab, that's another kind of comparison. So Lee
Nice.
Bardugo and V.E. Schwab, if you like those, you're gonna like my book.
Sweet. So what inspired it?
Yeah, okay, so two things actually. So once upon a time, way back during the ancient years of COVID, I was in school, I was in college, and we were doing Zoom plays through the school because we couldn't meet for an actual play because we were still in like, I don't know if it was like deep in quarantine, but it was still people didn't want to be like around. So we were doing Zoom plays and they had an opportunity where you could write a short play. And I submitted and I had this idea where there was like originally the three characters were called like Ending, Wake, and Resistance, and it was like beginning, middle, and end, and their mother was Fate. And long story short, we can debate the merits of the actual play and the script and stuff like that. It was a fun time. It always has room for improvement and learning, but it just kind of stuck with me, that idea, because that play was actually inspired by a book that I love so much. It's called Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly. And that was where I got the idea of like concepts being people. And I love that book so much that when I wrote the play kind of never left. And so I was like, oh, you know what? This sounds really fun. So then I wrote a short story and I shared it with my mom. And she was like, wow, this is really, really good. And so then I just kind of twiddled with it in my head for a while. And then when I finished and published the second book in my thriller duology, the Don't series, after that, I was like, okay, well, now I need a new project because that series is allegedly concluded. But at the time, that was the wrap up. So I was like, okay, new project. What do I do? And my mom was like, I really see some potential in this short story. And I was like, all right, that's enough for me. I'm going to go for it. So years upon years, I just kept twiddling with it in my head, making an outline, building out the world. And then finally, I just decided to start writing it. And one thing that I was realizing was that this story actually, well, all of my stories connect with me specifically, but each one kind of connects with the different facets of like what I've either struggled with or have been kind of pondering in my mind. And this one, I used to, and it still kind of rears its head every so often now. Used to deal with like very much scrupulosity, like feeling like everything I was gonna do was like wrong, and if I didn't do everything that I hated, then I was like sinning and doing awful things, and awful things were gonna happen. It was not a fun time. I was not a happy camper when I was dealing with that. And as I was thinking about ending, I was kind of like, ending is going to Priam. I'm sorry. The reason I mixed up that name was because way in the earlier stages, his name was just Ending. And then I changed it so that like ending is just like his title. So excuse me if I slip up. If I say ending, I'm referring to him. But Priam deals with something very similar because he is death himself and he feels like if he's around people, specifically if he touches anybody, he's scared that he's going to hurt them, kill them, make them ill, whatever. So he just thinks that his just kind of being, just doing normal things is just going to be awful, when in fact throughout the story you find out that it's not. Like his touch, his presence, it's not a killing power. He's just a person doing person things. And so I was realizing, I think that my journey through scrupulosity could be a really good analog, or vice versa, I suppose, to Priam's journey from feeling like he is just this dismal creature of the depths of the oldest world to being, no, I'm a person and I'm a person that's good and that I do good things. So those were the primary inspirations for the story. And now here we are. You're muted again.
There you go. Yeah, it's like Cthulhu loves tea parties. Why?
Oh my
What's the
goodness, I
world
love that.
like that you've created for this?
I'm sorry,
trying
say
to
that again?
I'm trying to place like these epic characters and what they're facing and the mystery and all this. What is the world like that it's set in?
Yeah, so it's a completely different world. So when I say imagine if the world was so young, it's not Earth. So it's not Earth just being brand new. It's a completely different world called Gara. And the way that Gara works, I haven't decided how it's shaped because I tend to get into the, dare I say, the who cares details, but I can't figure out if
Nerds
this
care. Come on.
Okay, good. I can't, maybe you can help me brainstorm this eventually. I can't figure out if it's planet shaped because the problem is the thing about this world that I am unwilling to let go of, and it serves no purpose, but I like it, so it's staying, is that the sun rises and sets once a year. So their 4 seasons aren't winter, spring, summer, fall. It's night, dawn, day, and dusk. And so perhaps the world is flat. I don't know. But so the sun rises and sets once a year, but the way that this world was formed is that in the center of Gara, there is this place called the Crest. And the Crest is basically this void of mist. And inside the void of mist, there is this person who I have not officially settled on a name, but he is this kind of being older than time, like God, who wove from the mist this world. And so the crest is the remnants of just what was before Gara. And the oldest creatures, besides just the non-physical world, but the oldest like sentient creatures are the essences, which would be Priam, it would be Indani, and it would be the rest of them. So now the world from there is divided into 12 different provinces, one for each of the essences, and they each have they have one language, and they're all so it's not a it's I wouldn't quite say they're separate countries because they all kind of see themselves as just part of Gara as a whole, but each one is governed individually by different governors. They each have their own cultures, and each one is patronized. That's not the right word. Each one has a patron being one of the essences. Now, as for the magic system, the way that works is a little bit of a surprise because it's going to be delved into a lot more in the second book, but kind of the baseline.
I was going to ask, is there a sequel?
Oh, there's 2 sequels. I think it's going to be a trilogy, if not a quadrilogy, probably a trilogy. So the magic, how that works, just like as the baseline, as far as Priam and the others know it, is that each of them has some control over their domain. So he has death, but it's not only death, it's like slowing things down and just like ending in general. But in order to access that magic, they actually have to bleed. So they have to give some kind of blood in order to activate that magic. And the thing about them is because they're immortal, and when I say immortal, it's like 95% immortal. They do eventually age, but it's like 10,000 years from now. So because they age so slowly, they also replenish on blood very slowly. So they can't just like use their power all the time because they will just bleed out and die. So that's the gist of it. There's more, but
Oh, so many questions.
Go for it.
1, why did you settle on blood? 2, how do you create characters that live massive amounts of time and still feel real and not like Galadriel, 2.0?
Yeah. So I settled on blood basically because I needed them to not be these like world-ending beings that could just do whatever they wanted all the time, because I want them to interact with the human people of the world. And of course, they're more powerful than the human people of the world, but at the same time, I need them to have some kind of weakness. I need them there to be a way that they can't just kind of like bloop, and the enemy armies just fall decimated kind of. I needed there to be severe limits on it. And as for making them not kind of feel like ethereal, ghostly, eternal things. Um, I would say that just Priam and them are first and foremost teenagers because they age very slowly. And while they do have like a whole lot more knowledge and wisdom from having lived like almost 2,000 years so far, their way of being, they're still in their teenage years. So just focusing on that, and then and this is something that I want to learn more about and play with more when I do my revisions, because right now it's just the draft. But like how to play with them being these like very world savvy beings, because they've been around for the fall and rise of languages, and there's been like a plague, there's been floods, they've seen it all. They've seen it all, they've been there for it all. Um and then still just being kids.
Okay, that's interesting. In this kind of world context, it creates a very interesting, like vampires would be really interesting. And you
Mhm.
could maybe understand why they would be doing what they do because they want what the gods have as opposed to what others, but just normal humans would be able to offer them. So that's cool. Okay, so it's in pre-order. And
Mhm.
Gianna, if you have any questions, go ahead and like,
Yeah.
wave in or tap in or ask them.
Yeah. I have one. So let's start with one question that I have. So I was really, really mesmerized and fascinated by what I want to call the origin mythos of your world, and you're clearly a master in world building. And so I just want to give you kudos of that. But when you were like world building and kind of like creating the just kind of like the let's start with that origin um back history, like did you really like delve into like in for lack of better words, like in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was with God, like were you like so I'm really curious how you approach that, because I know, for example, Tolkien is such a master at his own like creation story, and he really, there's even like books on it now. Like,
Mhm.
was that a huge focus for being able to establish like what happens to those sub beings within that creation? Because I know for me that's a huge challenge
Yeah,
and
good. Oh,
keeps
sorry,
me
go
from
ahead.
writing.
Yeah, good question. So actually, that came a little bit later. So, and especially because so like a lot of the world building frame. So all right, sorry. Let me slow down and not stammer every half a sentence. So I've done
Nerds
a
rule.
whole I've done a whole lot of playing around with the idea of how this world could work for the past few years. But a whole lot of the deeper world building actually came within the last 6 months or so, because I had a gist of the world, I had an idea of the world, um, because I just needed the things in the story to happen. But then I was able to do some coaching with my editor and some developmental editing. And she was like, hey, I think you really could dive so much deeper into this world and the economy and the religions and all of that. And so at the time, I can't remember exactly when the idea came, but at the time, primarily the crest was just actually like a prison. It was just supposed to be where one of the essences had disappeared, and I needed something that could contain an essence. But then as I started thinking, okay, if I'm building a world, how did the world start? How does that affect the people? How do the
Yeah,
people
exactly.
interact with the essences? Probably at some point they would see them as gods, but then Priam would have none of that. He's like, no, I'm not a god. I like came out of a lake. I'm not. I'm a me. And so, what would be the dichotomy there? Who put ending in the lake? How did ending get in the lake? So then I started to think about it, and it is how do I, the world of Gara is, I want to say, inspired by kind of my own belief system, the Catholic belief system and creation story and stuff like that. It is not supposed to be an analog to, because I can't get into the weeds of that, because I have just chosen to do so many other things with it that it's like, well, it's not going to be an exact parallel, but it is inspired by. So that's why I have the one kind of weaver in the center of the world. So I suppose it would be a combination of, for me, it started out as just kind of utilitarian, how the world was going to be. And then my editor and also reading some books really pushed me. Sorry, I said books and didn't even explain what they are. One of the most recent ones that I loved was Mistborn. The Final Empire. Holy moly, that was good. And like the way that the world began. There's another one that is I'm reading now that's pretty good. I have to give like content warnings for this one, but the world building wise, the one I'm really enjoying right now is Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Another one, believe it or not, again, content warnings, but Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. I was now taking a look at all of these vast different worlds and seeing like how much the origin story of how everything started actually filters down and influences literally every aspect of life. And so because this was my first time and I was learning, I actually went backwards, but now for future things, I'm thinking it is really good to start there. And of course, writing's fluid, so maybe I'll still come up with like a reason I need something and then see how it connects to the grander scheme of things. But yeah, it was a learning process for me and it was so much fun. And I really like how much the world has grown and become more real to me as I've been learning that.
Gotcha. Thank you for answering that because, yeah, just because I think for like, authors who world build and who do make like that creation or that creation origin a huge like part of their plot. um it can be really like they can get buried in that kind of like that, I'll just call it origin building and the details of it. And so yeah, thank you for answering like how you approach them. I'm probably going to have to hit you up on a conversation more about this because I would say I'm somebody who needs help. But
Oh, I would
yeah.
love to chat. It was a challenge for me too at the beginning because I wrote thrillers that were basically set in my neighborhood. I mean, like it was pretty, so I had no idea what to do with world building. And so I actually got to thank my editor over at Scott Editorial, Danny. She's awesome. She's the one that prompted me to really start thinking about it. And it was a challenge at first because I was like, I had no idea how many things there were that you could think about, but now that I am thinking about them, I'm like, this is so fun.
So I'd like to go the other way with a different question related to like origin stories. There's a number of fantasy novels I've read where you can tell there's probably a lot of depth to what the author's created, but they never get into the origin story. And if you press the author, he might say, yeah, I don't actually know what it is. Or I've never created it. I could maybe imagine it. So I used to handwrite out bestiaries of weird animals, for stories I'd be creating as a kid. Or every time I'd create a whole new fantasy series, I'd create an entirely new origin myth and so on. And now that I'm older, I never create origin myths. I just go and tell the story. And I really like allowing different characters to have competing origin myths that they get wrong. Or they think are right, but it's just the same way that we run around and deal with our world. Like, well, I think I know how the world came to be, and it was like this, and it's important to me because it informs who I am and how I go about things. And then I meet a Viking or somebody from another country, and they say, "Oh, well, my origin myth is this, and it informs how I do and why I don't respect you, but I do respect this particular thing." And so there's a point at which there's like, you can have absolute origin myths, which the author knows, but then there's like relative origin myths that the characters are aware of. And then you can have characters that don't even know or care about the origin myths because they don't actually really affect the story. It's like cool to know about, don't actually affect the story. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, what would you say to an author who feels like they're getting stuck or hung up on an origin myth?
Like me.
And it's kind of like me with like the LegendHaven world. I'm like building out this world and I'm deliberately making it impossible to actually kind of, spell out the origin myth. I've got a very vague idea of what it is, and it's deliberately big enough to allow for anything to happen, which is an impossible origin myth to ever write down. But because I want to create the biggest possible kind of world for anything to happen in it. What would you say for an author who's like, I've got to write this, I've got this really cool story, but I'm stuck in the origin myth. Is there anything that you would encourage? Anything that comes to your mind? Words of advice for them.
Yeah. So I would say that a couple things. One is don't obsess. So at anything, if you're obsessing over your first chapter, if you're obsessing over the backstory, if you're obsessing over the origin story, I would never if you're noticing that you cannot stop thinking about it, you cannot stop tweaking it because you feel like it's never enough, that's just going to drain you. And that actually does no good to the book, or it does no good to the reader. So I would say that almost at some point you just have to tell yourself, okay, that's good. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, but it's good. And not just good enough, because that's got kind of connotations of, well, it'll pass. No, it's good. So that's one thing I would say. The second thing is that if and when you are choosing to do origin stories, because you don't have to necessarily, because there are what is it called? Light fantasy. There's light fantasy where it's just kind of look, the magic happens, deal with it. And those are just as fun. I love all of those kind of books as well. But if you're choosing that you want to do an epic fantasy or one with a very hard magic system or world building or whatever, I would say to remember this, that you as the author know what actually happened, and that is going to affect however it trickles down to the present world. Now, whether people after that misunderstand, skew, retell, change, whatever, then that's great. Because I was talking about Mistborn, and Mistborn is very heavy on the talk of different religions and about how so many are different and each is very important to its people. Okay, that's great, because that's what happens now. There's so many different religions and not everybody agrees, and each one is very important to their own people. So it feels like real life. That said, there is something that happened originally, and people interacting with that thing across the years has led to the different beliefs, different interpretations. That doesn't negate the origin. What your job is as the author is to take that origin and see how it winds up panning out. Now, for me, in my particular instance, mine winds up panning out. Well, actually, I'm going to give you a non-spoilery teaser of later books. So in the first book, because the world is still relatively young, the origin story has panned out relatively close to how it happened in my mind as the author. But in later books, as time, circumstances, etc., continue to pass, they get far, far away from that origin story. Things have changed because of political interactions, because of social interactions, and just the way that people and cultures have changed over however much amount of time, which I'm not going to share because I don't actually know how much time has passed. But it really is a trickle effect. And so while I think it's important for you as the author to still know what happened originally, because you need that statement of truth and that solid ground for even you then to realize how people would interact with that and how it would change and result in then whatever you choose to want to happen at the time of the story.
Cool. Awesome. I think partly to recap, but also to then provide my own answer to the question, it would be, if you have as an author, you can have a vibe or a sense of your origin story. But you do need to then ask yourself, does it actually need to be included in this story?
Right, because not every bit of world building can or should be on the page.
Yeah, it's not actually relevant. You can pull what is that author's name? Not Wheel of Time, Shannara, where chapter 2, and it's 6 pages of world building info dump all at once, as you know, and then he goes into it, and it's
I hate those
campfire for forever. I didn't get through that book very well.
Info dumping is another pitfall. Yeah.
Or then you go the other route, and it's what is that? That's Cafe and Lattes? No, Legends and Lattes.
Mhm.
There's zero world building. It's there's an orc who starts a cafe, and there's a luck stone. Now you know enough, and that's it.
Right.
And it's okay, I can accept the parameters of this, situation. How did luckstones come about? You don't need to know. Just go with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Or there's that other book, Gabby, you recommended to me, which was I'm pretty sure it was by Schwab. It's The Girl Who Could See Shadows.
Oh,
or
Wait,
ghosts.
Addie LaRue? No,
No,
Girl Who
no,
Can See
it's the
Ghosts.
girl who
Oh,
can see
no, Ninth
ghosts.
House.
I think that's right.
You
Yes.
recommended that to me.
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
I'm
you
still
did.
halfway through. It's like the two houses that are mirror versions of each other or
Oh,
something.
Gallant. Sorry. Yes, Gallant.
Gallant. Okay.
Not Ninth House. Okay.
And in that one there, and again, I'm only most of the way, half of the or 3/4 of the way through. There's still no world building that's provided. It's just here's the situation, here's the characters, here's what you're struggling with, deal with it. And there's no answers beyond the fact that these are how the laws of things work. And so sometimes that can be enough to provide a story. You don't need to go and write a Silmarillion in the back and create your own Wikipedia, which is usually where I get stuck, and then I don't write a novel because I want to create my own wiki. Yeah. So, okay, let's move into I've actually moved things around. I put the quick fire questions at the end because that's just a fun way to end. So let's talk about host project updates. Technically, we are all the hosts. I'm going to ask that we mute if you're not actually talking. It helps to keep the audio clear. That's great. I'll try to do that too. So host writing updates. Like I said, we are basically the hosts. So it's like we just gave all of our own updates. So Gabby, you just did yours. I wrote a new story this past week, which was very fun, setting up the world of Bannermark. And I'm terrible about being the host of a writing community, and I never write my own stories. So finally got another one in, which felt very cool to write. It took me about 3 days to do. And by the third day, I didn't have any additional like creative magic sort of flowing in my veins and out into the keyboard. And I just sat down. It's like, you know what? It's like putting one foot in front of the other, where you just go to the gym. I don't go to the gym. You just get the reps in and you don't need to think about it. But you know that words can be put at the end of an idea and you can put it on a page and you can just get it done. And so I just wrote the last third of the story and realized, oh, I can actually write without feeling creatively inspired. That's actually really interesting because I've already done the work, and the rest of you, people in the audience are like, yeah, welcome to the party, noob. It's like, I know. Well, okay, I just had to rediscover that for myself. But it is something that we can encourage other authors. If you're not feeling inspired, it's like, that's okay. You can actually still write. If you've learned the discipline of walking and you don't feel it, you can still walk if you decide it's important enough to do. It was just cool to sort of re-remember that. So the first draft of the story is done. Gabby gave me some really awesome feedback about, okay, too much world building at the beginning. Again, that's my problem. Put the character in trouble, which I didn't think about. Make him more in trouble at the beginning. Okay, that makes more sense. I included a knife, I think, early on and did nothing with that later on. It's like, don't show a gun on the mantelpiece if you don't plan to use it later on or something. So I need to go through and like re-edit it and do a bit more. But it's very fun to start setting up some of the world building. That's largely me. Are you working on anything specific, Gabby, now that you're done with ending? Is there anything else creative that you're kicking around?
Yeah, so actually, so I'm letting it kind of sit and marinate and stew for a little bit. And also just giving myself a brain break. But in the meantime, I have this idea that I am so excited for, which is tad bit of backstory real quick. So actually last year, I wrote and submitted a retelling of Red Riding Hood to an anthology outside of Legend Fiction, and it didn't get selected. Okay, but I really, really liked the story, and I was like, I think I could do something fun with this. And my best friends, beta readers, they loved it too. So I was like, okay, you know what? I I don't even apparently over the last year it happened, but I wound up coming up with like another kind of massive saga and world for where this could actually take place. And I don't have well, two things. At the time I decided this, I did not have it in me to think about writing like another huge book. Um, because ending is like current now I got to cut it down. I am going to cut it down, but currently it's at 145,000 words. And the thought of doing that again immediately was kind of like I think I'd like a little bit of instant gratification. And I also think it would just like work better bite-sized. And there's also something fun about just having like constant short releases but constant releases. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a novella series. And the novella series is going to be horror retellings of I not quite horror retellings. They are scary, they are eerie, but they're like dark fairy tale retellings of the original fairy tales. And so I'm working on one right now. Currently it's the series. I don't know what the titles are going to be called, but the series I'm calling the Barbarian Angel series. Um so I've I don't want to say I've finished the world building, but I have a solid grasp of the world building enough that I can start writing. And so that's what I'm working on while I let ending kind of sit for a little bit.
That sounds really cool. Where can somebody get a read of your Red Riding Hood story?
Yeah, so I will send you a link because actually right now the place where it is it's on BookFunnel. And so there's a BookFunnel link and you can drop it down below and that's where you can read it right now.
Sweet. Okay, so I just saying out loud, so I remember I've got to get 2 links from you: your pre-order for ending and the BookFunnel link for your Red Riding Hood story. Cool. Gianna, do you have any updates on writing on your end that you want to share? And you don't have to if you don't want to.
Is this for writing on
Yeah, just
personal
writing
novel projects or
any personal novel or any personal writing projects that you're kicking around?
Yeah, so in terms of anything I'm doing for the series that I'm currently working on, I don't really work too much on it recently in the last few days, but I did have, but one thing that was big for me was that, I had an epiphany and I mulled over it for a little bit and I realized that it was a good idea to so just for context, for anyone who doesn't know, and I don't know how much Gabby knows about it, but the current premise of the story series that I'm working on is set in a it's like a romantic fantasy genre inspired by Beauty and the Beast, but it also has fantastical elements of it that I call like if Beauty and the Beast met Kingdom Hearts and is set in the Victorian era or something like that.
Yeah, that's not cool at all.
But one of the ideas that I came up with, even though I didn't really write too much about it, but it was after for the longest time a minor antagonist that I have. I wanted to give him more screen time because he is important, even though he's a minor antagonist, and I wanted to see if I could try to connect him in a way to the secondary antagonist, so that because there's a reason why we have primary antagonists and we have secondary antagonists, and I was able to come up with a way that to connect them in a way that wasn't completely directly related. But the idea that I came up with was, how about if I make this secondary, this minor antagonist, who is a king, who is struggling to, he's wondering, how can I keep, my lineage going because I'm the first king of this dynasty, and I'm like also like really obsessed about like having a spotless reputation and not causing scandal. So that's a little bit about this minor antagonist, but I would say he also is trying to have a rule with a sense of honor and but I decided, why don't I give him an older brother who is now deceased, but this older brother is actually the recently it turns out the grandfather of an illegitimate grandchild that came to be while the king's older brother was still young, but he doesn't realize about this until much later, and that illegitimate grandchild would be the secondary antagonist. So that's the idea. That's for me a big thing that I would say was a huge win, because I always try to make sure that if there are secondary minor characters, they need to have some importance. So yeah.
So really fleshing out.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're building out more depth with some of the other characters. That's awesome. Yeah, you've been working on this one for a while. It's a slower paced project.
Yeah.
Gabby is a lot more high powered, just like Red Bull in the tank, put out a book in 3 months, and the rest of us are like a little slower about stuff.
Red Bull and Stray Kids cranked very high.
There you go. What are those Sour Patch Kids? Just cram them both in, just turn it into words. One thing that's totally, it's unrelated, but it's super cool. I was researching for a novel that I would like to write, and I really want to give this a go. One of the major projects that I've been doing over this past month, apart from everything, big Thanksgiving and the holidays and stuff, I was trying to research a way to basically to crank out novels. I want to understand or create a formula. So I was researching and studying how novels were written, like, Hardy Boys, or if anybody has ever seen or heard of that series, um, Race Against Time, which I loved those books as a kid. They were just incredible. And so I was thinking, I want to create a superhero-based series. Gabby and I was poking you for a month ago about we need to create one for the the community. I don't know how or what. And so I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I love the idea of mashing up classical characters. So I want to turn the Scarlet Pimpernel and the Phantom of the Opera and the Count of Monte Cristo into superhero style characters, and then put them all in a single novel. And after watching Frankenstein, the new Del Toro Frankenstein, I thought that zombified, Frankenstein monster figure, I want a secret war with vampire type creature people, happening in 1820, something like that. So turn of the century, slightly pre-steampunk or just beginning to be steampunk. And it's all about, information networks. And, Scarlet Pimpernel runs a secret society, of course, of 20 groups of guys. And anyhow, where I'm going with this is doing research for this time period, because it's, funnily enough, this is the only time period in all of history I've always hated. Probably because I watched The Patriot too much with Mel Gibson as a kid. And I was so mad at seeing lines of people, redcoats and rebels, and they just walk up to each other, look at each other, and then just shoot each other, and they all fall over. And I thought, this is stupid as a kid, right? Pull out your swords, move around, do so. I hated that kind of warfare. And I think the people who got hurt in it probably did too. But they didn't have, that was it. That's what you just, Anyhow, so I always hated that time period. And now I'm creating a novel set in that time period. So, okay, I need to go actually research. And it's actually a pretty dope time period. So I rewatched War and Peace, the new BBC series. And like, oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. And it's like 6 episodes. And then I was researching Paris over, that time period. And right before the French Revolution, I found something I'd never heard of before that was actually pretty terrifying and super cool for a new origin story for the Phantom of the Opera. So what I wanted him to be is somebody who is almost vampire from that underworld, but he's trying to get out of it. And so that's why he's wearing the mask, because he's super ugly, of course, but he can never take it off. And it's not just because, stuff was splashed in his face as a playwright or as an opera creator, which is part of the original story. So instead, I want him running a secret underground network of people keeping the underground of Paris safe, because I didn't sort of realize this. Paris is actually, it's been described as the floating city, because all of the stonework from Paris comes from mines directly underneath the city. So there's hundreds of miles of empty galleries of stone mines that people have just been mining underneath Paris for centuries, since the Roman times or something. So they weren't trucking it in from everywhere else. They're just, the problem is, there's so many massive galleries and empty spots, and there's miles and miles and miles of tunnels underneath there. It's described as a floating city. It's just like it's sitting on bubbles of rock. Well, as it turns out, there's one street about 20 years or 10 years, no, 10 years, right before the French Revolution or so. Hell Street, Rue de l'Enfer, collapsed completely. And all of the houses and all of the people who lived there, I guess, completely collapsed into a dark void, and of course, we're never seen again. So if you put this in context, this is at the time where the Sun King, the French king, right, is really having a hard time keeping France together. And so he summons everybody to come and live in the Palace of Versailles, all the nobles, from what I can understand. All of them come live literally in his parish, in his castle, so that he can keep his eyes on them. And they're all delegating and running their country from, the Versailles Palace, and so they're all living on top of each other. It's a bit of a nightmare. All the poor people are flooding into the city, and there's not enough food, and there's not enough civil engineering to take care of them, and it's getting worse and worse, and people are really getting mad at how things are, being handled. Obviously, it's building up tension that ends up exploding in the French Revolution. Imagine what happens when literally chunks of the city start breaking up under your feet and disappearing. How terrified would you be of the streets that you walk on, and they don't really do anything about it, or they can't really do anything about it, and they don't care about you? Let them eat cake, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, the terror I would probably feel, wondering who's next. What can anybody do, because they've over honeycombed underneath the streets for rock to build massive, beautiful buildings and stuff. So I thought, okay, the scene where the Phantom becomes the Phantom we know and love, which nobody does, it's in my head still. There's going to be some massive horrible event that happens under Hell Street that ends up collapsing it, and he's right there at that scene, and that's where everything happens. And that would be his origin story, is that moment. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a super cool. Anyhow, then there's the rest of the whole story that I'm still building out, but I'd never heard of that point, that moment in French history, and it was insanely cool. Let's talk about short story writing, and which is the one thing we're supposed to be doing this whole time anyway. So Gabby, I'm going to half throw you back on the hot seat here, but it's a bit of a back and forth. So we're writing stories in the community.
Mm-hmm.
What makes a short story? What are the things that you don't do? What are the things that you do? Because we've got multiple anthologies. People are creating pitches, and I'm like, okay, that seems like a pretty good story. And then they go ahead and write it, and they send it in, and I'm reading the story, and it's like there's rookie mistakes, and that's kind of the whole point. We're all rookies coming together to get better at the practice of learning how to do stuff. But I think we're forgetting, or we don't understand, what a short story is trying to do, as opposed to a chapter in a book versus a novella. And I'm going to completely throw myself under the bus on that one too, in that I routinely write short stories that are mostly just letting off steam for a novel that I'm terrified to write. And so I just compress parts of it into a story, and I try to give it an ending, and I know I'm opening up, hinting at stuff. I think that's still okay to do in a short story, as long as the promise of the premise is delivered, which is the first 3 to 5 paragraphs says, this short story is going to deliver on these specific things, whether it's an answer or an action adventure or an event. The story has to deliver on that. And maybe there's a little bit of a door that can be left open towards other things, but if your friend is lost, do you find your friend? You don't do like it's like Indiana Jones. If there's like a treasure that needs to be found, and you state that we're going after the doohickey of somebody, you have to find that thing by the end. You can't change it by the end and go, well, it's morally superior for us to not actually take this thing out of the place. Like, no, if it's a heist, you steal the gems. That's the point of the story. If the point of the story is you're a morally decrepit person and you have to learn how to do something and how to let stuff go, oh, and the subplot is a little bit of a heist, but you realize I actually need to let everything go and something. Okay, well, then the story was not actually about the gold. And you make that really clear right at the beginning. So it's like, deliver on the promise of your opening points. That's one initial thought. What do you think, Gabby? What makes a short story a short story? Because it's a specific thing that is not a chapter or a novel like compressed down into like only 6,000 words or something.
Yeah, exactly. So a short story, I'm going to say, is a whole, complete, self I can't remember the word, but it stands on its own story. And the other thing is that while it needs to have a lot of the same elements as say, a full length novel or even a novella, so there needs to be a character with motivation and stakes, there needs to be a goal, there needs to be a character arc. It does need to have all those things, but it is not a novel. And I think that it's not just a novel that's short, it is a story that stands on its own. And I think that's what a lot of us fall into, myself included, is that when we are thinking about these stories, we think of all the things that we want to happen inside of them. And that's great for a novel. But if you want to fit something into 3,000 words, you can't have that much going on. In fact, I was laughing with my best friend the other day. that the pitch that I actually did for Grim Winter, I wrote out all that was going to happen, and I was staring at it, and I was like, that is not going to work in 3,000 words. That it's just not going to happen. And what I always say, in fact, I was telling a client the other day because I run Bone Piercer Media, which is a media and editing company. And so I was working with a client and she was talking about word count. She was like, am I going to have to add more of a word count? I don't want it to get too long. And I was like, okay, if you don't want to make it too long, that is just fine. That's wonderful. That means you cut scenes, not word count. Sorry, you cut scenes, not words spent per scene. So the way to make a short story is not to have a bunch of scenes and to make them all shorter. It's to have fewer scenes, fewer progressions of things must happen. And that's why it can be a little bit challenging because you have to have an entire arc with stakes and plot and action going on in about, if you're lucky, 3 scenes. If you are lucky. But I have found that 1 to 2 scenes is really, really the sweet spot. And so I'm going to give you a little tip and trick. There's a little bit of a cheat code. And so that is, while, of course, plot, character arc, all of it needs to happen in a short story, you can imply things. I was about to say you can cut corners, but you can't cut corners. You can imply things rather than stating them. For example, a full-length novel, you would have, the normal world, you would have the inciting incident, you'd have the resistance to that, then you'd have the door of no return, and then you would go off on your journey, right? Most of that beginning can probably be cut. You probably want to start maybe like a sentence or 2 that's a little bit of normality. I mean, this is possibly a little bit of personal preference sneaking in here, but like I wouldn't put the first sentence where something explodes. You could, but it's always nice to have like a 1 to 2 sentence transition in, but you're not going to have an entire normal world, then inciting incident. The inciting incident probably has already happened. Your character probably already has a goal in mind that they have to get to, and you might spend, not immediately, but you might spend within the first third or so a few sentences kind of expressing, hey, this is what it was like before, this is what had to change, and that's why I am now on this journey. But you see, what you did there is you didn't take a beginning and just make it short, and you didn't take an inciting incident and made it short. You just shanghaied those out of I don't even know if I use that properly. You excused them. You jettison those, and you give enough context later so you know what's happening, but you focus and you delve hard and you immerse and you just really go hard on the scenes that you select. And again, 1 to 2, 3 if you're lucky, 4 if you are just a little godling of writing. You know what I mean? And so you have to be very selective about those scenes. What is going to make the most progress in one fell swoop, and what is going to be the most impactful? And a lot of times you're gonna have to simplify the story. You can't have some grand, elaborate, sneaky heist mystery political uprising in an epic fantasy world in a short story. Like, you can't have Mistborn, because that's my new obsession. I cried last night when I finished it. You can't have the entirety of Mistborn as a short story. It just won't work. You might be able to isolate something similar to one scene. So if you were to make one scene and be like, okay, let's see if we could make this its own thing and make it there's a word and I'm not thinking of it. Make it stand on its own.
Self-contained.
Come again?
Self-contained.
That's it. Thank you. Self-contained. Sorry, I don't know if that was really loud.
No, you're good.
Self-contained. If you could, that you could do in a short story. You cannot have something on the grand scale of Mistborn in a short story. So, long story short, that was a pun and I didn't even mean to make it so. Anyway, to recap, you're going to want to make it very few scenes and make the scenes very simple but very powerful. And if you have to cut extraneous outside material, that's great. Do that, because you want those scenes to really have an impact. Otherwise, it will just be a summary of a lot of things happening, and that's not a story. A story is when you're in the moment and you're living it, and it's done really well and really powerfully.
Yeah, very good. The challenges that immediately come to my mind when I'm trying to define what is a short story and what is not is there's always exceptions to the rule, and therefore it's not a good rule if there aren't exceptions to the rule. I'm thinking, for example, like O. Henry, right? And he wrote his story, what is it, The Three Magi? And it's about two characters, and it happens over the period of like a while, and it's not following any of the rules that we're talking about. So I think what's going to be helpful is you have to learn rules, not so that you can break them, but so that you know how and when to apply them. So some things that are helpful to me and that I think are good to practice, they're good to learn. Parameters for how to learn to create a good short story. And if you can learn to do that, I'm not saying that I'm a genius, but these are the things that have made sense to me that I'm holding on, so I'm trying to pass them on. Keep it within a short time frame. Don't have it run for a massive period of time. That is a much harder story to sustain, as opposed to a single scene of two characters arguing in a cafe. And the point of the story, you have to answer the question, what is the point? And you should be able, I think, to summarize that in a single sentence. Throw myself under the bus here, or put myself up as an example. The short story that I wrote for Thrill Runners, the whole thing is a heist. It's a heist that goes wrong. They try to steal something out of a high-tech situation, and it goes wrong. That's the story. And you try to deliver that in 6,000 words. If you have, well, the character's in love with the enemy queen, and he's trying to get something to her, and she doesn't believe him, and then the bad guy ends up doing this thing, and then he has to change the plan to ultimate. Okay, you've just described a novella. Maybe go and do that novella. A story or a short story might be you're trying to deliver a thing, hoping it'll have an outcome, and then there's the handoff. Will you make the handoff? That's the story. Or Queen didn't believe you and threw you in the dungeon. Do you survive? That could be the story. And it could technically be a section out of a much bigger story. But the point is, it's like we talked earlier about the promise of the premise, which sounds like a tongue twister. But it's when you're setting up the story. This makes sense to me, and I've seen this done really well, and so I'm trying to make it my habit. Within the first 3 to 5 paragraphs, you should have stated who the character is, what do they want, where is this story going, and in a sense of the world that it's in. In 3 to 5 paragraphs, you have got to nail that. If I'm reading by the end of page 2 and I don't know where this is going or why I should care, there's going to be something wrong, with the rest of the story. So 2 pieces of if you can learn this and practice this, it is awesome advice. One is literally state what your main character wants as the first thing when you meet him. I want X, or I'm going to do X, whatever it is. So the first thing that they say is the thing that is most important to them. I learned this piece of advice when you introduce a character in a book. You'll now start seeing this maybe all over the place in movies. As soon as I learned this piece of advice, I was watching John Wick 2. And then I realized, oh my gosh, they did it in this movie, which is the very first thing a character says is a thing that sums up their character. It's not just like, oh, could you pass me the salt, please? Thank you very much. And how was your day? It's like, no. In the very first scene where you meet 2 characters in the beginning of John Wick, they recap who their characters are and kind of the roles they play in the story. They introduce 2 side characters. One said to the other, he's the tall black concierge, and he goes, I hope that Mr. Wick is going to be okay now that the whole city's out for blood. And it's like, man, that is a perfect summary of the gentility and the care and the attention of his character. And they just sum that up. And then the head of the Continental replies something like, I think, he's good at his job. I'd be more afraid for everybody else. It's like, oh yeah, he's kind of a callous, businessman sort of thing. That line sums up his character. That's an awesome little tactic for introducing characters in a story. Can you capture their character in a single sentence? And then if you're doing a short story, can you capture what the character wants? And I think you'll notice this in a lot of movies, a lot of stories. It can feel really on the nose as an author trying to write this out. Your audience doesn't actually perceive it that way, which is kind of cool. It's a bit like a magician. A magician has hand wavium. Pay no attention to the thing I'm quietly doing behind my back. Like, look, stars, and then you pull the card out, right? And that's what authors do. Look, world building, character change, right? It's exactly what authors are doing. So have somebody ask the character, what do you want? You know, there's again, I'll pull from my own experience, short story I wrote where it was for the Coco Cafe, where two characters meet each other and they're both lying to each other. And the first thing trying to share in 3 to 5 sentences or 3 to 5 paragraphs, what does the main character want? And his life depends on it. And then when the new, other character comes in, they very clearly, literally sit down and ask each other, what do you want? What are we dealing with? But you don't want to, if you want to take things to the next level, you don't straight up say those words. You try to it's a bit weird to sit down and look at somebody and go, what do you want out of life? It's like you go, so, where'd you grow up? What did you wish you would be when you grew up? What's not working for you these days? And you're kind of like edging around the central question of what do you want? It's how we all operate, when we're asking each other questions. So try to answer that question. What does the main character want? And then make sure that they get that by the end of the story. Like Gabby said, don't have multiple scenes trying to track, a huge conversion experience. I remember trying to create a conversion experience where a brother hated his sister. She was in a car accident. He decided he loved her. And I thought it was the hardest thing to make work because I wanted him to dislike her throughout the whole thing until the car accident. And then by the end, I never felt like it actually worked. And the reason why was because the conversion experience was so massive. It was a 180-degree, enemies to lovers kind of thing. You can't squish a whole trope like that into a short story. It's why it needs multiple different experiences. Now, you can have a 1% conversion rate, like, okay, fine, maybe you're not so bad, I'll tolerate you. Okay, that is a more believable progression in the space of like a story. And then the other tip, which is also really awesome, you'll notice this, it'll be done a lot. Somebody will literally ask the other person, oh no, this seems impossible. What are you going to do? And that is an awesome way to get characters out of their heads and into action by literally having somebody else ask them, what are you going to do? Okay, here's my plan. You straight up create side characters, not just to have massive internal worlds on their own. They're literally created to be like thorns in your main character's side, to poke at them and ask them and get them to be externalizing things. And so when you create a character, this is why Disney always pairs a princess with a little thing, so that you have something to interact with and talk to and externalize your inner world. You'll notice this as you continue to like watch lots of movies. Sometimes you'll create like bigger side characters and the more will be happening with them. In a short story, don't do that. Characters are flat. Main character is the one that has maybe the most depth. And side characters really exist to poke at the main character and get them to externalize what's going on. Because in a short story, the point usually is, again, you state a rule, there's always exceptions. In the point of a main story, the main character and what they're going through is the point of the thing. And it's usually limited by time, limited by number of experiences. If there's like a conversion, like you need someone to change their mind, don't expect to go a 180-degree change within the space of a story. So Gabby, or Gianna, if there's any questions or thoughts, on that to simplify or clarify or enrich any of that, what would you say? And Gabby, I'll poke at you first if you want.
Yeah, no, I thought that you covered it all really well. I love how you said that there were exceptions to the rule because, like, as you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, I actually have read like a short story that was really good that did span like decades, but it was almost in kind of like a episodic fashion where he would talk about different things that would happen, and those even just little snippets felt really immersive. That's not something I have experience with, so I don't have kind of like practiced advice to give, but I loved how you said there were exceptions to the rule. I love how you said not so many characters. I neglected to mention that. Not a cast. You get three people if you want, obviously. Again, exceptions to the rule. If you manage to do an entire, Merry Fellowship of the Ring or whatever the Hobbit and those 13 people are, if you manage to do that, more power to you. 3 is usually a good safe spot. That's the amount of people that can really do something useful in 1 to 2 scenes. I love the thing that you said about the dialogue. You had told me that and I forgot about it. And then as you kept talking, I was like, ooh, how am I going to put that in ending? I think that was great. Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. Gianna, any thoughts or questions?
I think all of the things that you both said were really, really helpful, especially as someone who yeah, you know, isn't as familiar with what, the nuances that make, a novella and a short story different, or distinct from a novel that is simply short. And I think it was really helpful to hear from both of you, or to understand from both of you that a short story is not a novella, and that a short story is also not a short novel. And here's kind of like the general or the usual formula, I guess, for it. So that's all I can say. I think it's really helpful to like hear from both of you. What are the parameters that you guys would have.
Nice. I can see you were
yeah.
taking so many notes and all that.
Yeah, I was taking so many
to see
notes.
the notes that people
Yeah,
take and how they
I
take
have
them.
3 pages of like, well, I mean, this is tiny, so that's why it's 3 pages of it. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So okay, so then to recap a little bit, if you're creating a short story, it's obvious the definition of a story is a character who wants something bad enough to do something about it. In a novel, what you do is you take that and then you stack it in like maybe 3 major sections. First problem, oh, I wasn't aware that this is everything happening in the world. Let me recalibrate and try again. Second problem, man, I'm better, but still not really mapped up to how big this problem situation is. Third act, okay, I think I've finally got it. Now we're going to finally make it work. That's a novel. In a short story, it's usually going to be character who wants something bad enough to do something about it, and there's usually maybe like one problem to overcome. Now, if you're an overachiever, or maybe someone like me, I'll try to create like 3 small things or 3 short little problems, and then you create the situation to sort of get through. So, for example, the story that I crafted for, I'm just gonna. What was the name of the book? Thrill Runners. The story for Thrill Runners, it's like a heist that then goes wrong, and then they have to create a new answer to get out of an impossible situation. So the first major problem, he airdrops into the skyscraper and then has to find a new way to get out when somebody shoots one of the bad guys shoots one of his teammates, and so he then gives her the escape plan that he was going to take. Now he's got to have plan B, and that would normally be like, okay, that's it. You get into the tunnels and then you're out. I'm like, well, if you're in a skyscraper, you really want to add more detail that also kind of explores the world, but shows maybe a little bit more of the character. So try to get out through the elevator shaft, and then you get on a traveling thing, and then a drone affects you, and then you have to jump into the cruise ship, right, to get out. And so it's still the same major problem, plan B, but then you added little problems in between it. So it's not to say you still can't have complexity and lots of things going on. Turns out I write short stories to just do actiony stuff, but mostly to spend time with a character that I've been spending time like, oh, this seems like a really cool character. So avoid too much. Again, the point is a character who wants something bad enough to do something about it and overcomes the problems. And you're going to set that up in 3 to 5 paragraphs, and then in about 6,000 words, 5,000 words, you deliver that, and you avoid too much backstory, world building, other characters. Gabby nailed it. Maybe 3 characters is probably enough. Maybe there's an antagonist. Again, the side characters are not going to have their own conversion experiences. They're literally going to exist to get your main character to do stuff or to say stuff or to support them. So friends, if you're watching this and you've got other opinions and you absolutely want to take us to town, go ahead and do that in the comments. So I'm going to now take Gabby to town with our rapid fire questions. This is the last section here of our show. I don't think I've ever asked you any of these. So I'm going to start in the middle of my list so that we get some different questions here. Okay, a quote that you love. And we're going to go for maybe 5 minutes because I know you got to bounce pretty soon. So 5 minutes. What is a quote that you love?
One that I wrote or one that I didn't write?
You choose.
The one that I wrote comes quickly to head, which is finally the scar, the thing that has been keeping me safe, is sliced open. That's
Sheesh.
Yes, it's in my first book. It's on my website, and it kind of summarizes the whole book and kind of my writing career, which is just I want to cut deep and I want to feel stuff. I want people to feel stuff.
Sweet. Okay. Your favorite surprise ending in a book,
Oh,
not
favorite.
your character.
I don't know if it's going to be favorite because it hurt, but Mistborn is just at the top of my mind. The Final Empire, that was pretty incredible.
Okay. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would you choose?
Oh, okay. My first thought is that my mom makes this really cool like sautéed vegetable sandwich, and I think that's a nice combination of tastes delicious, would never get tired of it, and also like light enough that I wouldn't start to feel like, like McDonald's tastes great, but I think if I ate that like so much, I'd be like, oh, I want to die. That or pho, Vietnamese noodle soup. I'm gonna go with those two.
Nice. Okay. Stupidest question that you've ever been asked as an author.
Oh, jeepers. I don't know. I kind of don't catalog questions as being stupid because I'm always just like, good question. All right. Can I pass and I'll come
Yeah,
back
yeah,
to it
you
if
can
I think of
always
something?
say skip. Something you've never been able to do well.
Something I have never been able to. I am not a fantastic dancer, naturally. I'm trying to learn, but it's just, I'm definitely more of a boxer.
Okay. If you had a time machine, what time period would you travel to?
The future. I want to see what's going up around in the future. I don't want to go in the past. There's nothing in the past that's there for me to see.
We've seen all of that one already. Okay. What did you like most about yourself?
Ooh, I am one of the things I like best about myself is that I'm a very quick learner. I'm a very quick learner, and I'm also really loyal. Those are two things I like a lot about myself.
Awesome. What time of day are you most productive writing?
Okay, nighttime, evening time when everybody's asleep, everyone's alone. I stick on my music. The caveat to that is I have to be well rested. So if I'm exhausted and then it gets to nighttime, then I'm not productive. But if I've had a good night's sleep, I was able to sleep in, nighttime's where it's at.
Cool. What do you allow yourself to splurge on?
Books
How
and
many
earrings.
times? And earrings? Okay. How many times did you cry writing your book?
Like cry because I was upset with the progress or cry because it was sad?
You choose.
Okay. Okay, so my second book done. I've never actually cried because of my own writing, like outright, but with the second book, as I was revising it, there were some lines that I hadn't remembered that I had written and I choked up. So I'm going to say that was once, maybe twice.
Okay. Wow. Who's your fictional crush?
Wendell Bambleby from the Emily Wilde series.
That was fast.
It was fast.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a writer. I want to just publish novels constantly.
I think that's good for today. Yay. Thank you both for coming on. This was fun to spend time with you, and we talked about a whole bunch of everything. We will try to be back next Thursday. If not, then maybe next Wednesday. And both of you ladies are welcome to join. And friends, if you have any questions, you can drop them right in the comments, and we will get around to answering them. I think we covered a good one today, talking about stories. Maybe next week I can go through my list of other stuff. Probably even revisit. There's a question that came up. And Gabby, if you jump on, I'd love to run that by you as well. And Gianna, I'm sure you'll have some good follow-ups for it too on how to be a full-time author, because the world has changed. The world has changed. I can feel it in the air. Tools are different. People's expectations are different. So how to be a full-time author is a really good question, how to think about that. I'm going to try to get Katie Campbell to come on and talk about that. She's trying to do that herself. So, all right, friends, if you haven't yet, check out legendfiction.com. You can start a 30-day free trial to poke around, have a look at what we're doing, what's going on. We have a number of really exciting programs, as Gianna and both Gabby shared with us earlier. We've got a collaboratory where authors who want to talk about marketing can meet up every month. We have a call where we get together. We have a bunch of resources that we're building. Members of the collaboratory can jump on this live stream at any point to come and hang out and ask questions and share what they're up to. And we would love to invite you to write for us on our blog and share what you think. So you can check out the collaboratory and check out the writing school. We think it is the coolest, writing school that we can build, and Gabby is focusing on that specifically in the new year. So 3 lessons a month, and you're going to finish writing a book by the end of the year, or you're going to write a story a month, and you're going to make progress and actually be a cool author, because we're only full of the coolest storytellers in the world in our writing community. So check it out, legendfiction.com. Till next time, keep writing. May the lore be with you, but most importantly, keep writing.
This is the way.